those who do not know me, my name is Alana Allen. I am the owner of Alana Knows Nonprofits. I am also the founder and executive director of I'm a Queen. So I am a huge believer in understanding what you currently are going through when it comes down to trying to receive grant funding. Also, if you are an artist, if you are someone who is just, you love art, you love plays, you love anything that deals with expression, this is the place for you. So I'm happy to introduce, Darlene, what are you doing? I'm happy to introduce Darlene McClinton. She is a jack of all trades, I would definitely say. She is the owner of the Artist Bloc. She is the grants manager for Arts Greensboro. She is also an artpreneur, so that means that she's contracted to do a variety of things. But Darlene, I wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the people.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Darlene J. McClinton. I am a artpreneur, as she says. I wear a lot of several creative hats. A few of my creative hats is that I'm an artist first and everything else is second. The next is arts education. I've been teaching at A&T for 12 years. And then my next hat is I am an artpreneur. I own 3 businesses in the city of Greensboro. The first business is the Artist Bloc, where creative minds meet, which is an arts venue here located on 1020 Westgate City Boulevard. The second business is Tab Arts Center Nonprofit, where I am a co-owner there and co-founder, but I am hands-off because I am a grants manager. And then also my third one is something I just launched. It's called Creative Chromosome Artist Agency, which is my mural business, public art that I do in the city of Greensboro. And I also hire a lot of people. So it's pretty much a staffing agency for creatives, for us to continue to work and do what we love. And then last but not least, I am a grants manager at Arts Greensboro, newly promoted to creative community engagement officer. So
that's my God.
That just happened. But at the end of the day, everything that deals with me is the core of arts. And I just understand the arts industry in a holistic way.
Awesome. So for tonight's conversation, we are going to be talking about the process of applying for grants. And Darlene has slapped my hand probably several times because I've had clients or I've had friends who wanted to apply for grants. And she would say all the time, Alana, you need to get this grant in on time. Like, she's texting us, she's reminding us like, hey, the deadline is coming up. So a lot of times you don't experience, grant managers like Darlene. So she's awesome for this community. These principles can be applied to other funders, under other foundations that you're interested in applying to. So Darlene, can you share with us your job duties as a grant manager when you were a grants manager?
So the grants manager role is a very great position in a sense. It includes us managing the grants, reaching out, doing outreach, community efforts, reviewing budgets, making sure that we adhere to the guidelines, understanding where the funding is coming from, understanding our target market, whether we are working with individual artists or nonprofit art organizations, processing reports. So once we gather this data, we need to analyze the data and create reporting. The reports have to go back to the whoever has funded us. So that's another thing that people don't realize. Like, if we're asking you for an interim or a final report, it's because we need that data to be able to give back to the agencies. Reviewing grant proposals, managing the grant database. Right now we use Submittable, but that is a little bit intense. Educating the staff on various policies, funding needs, researching opportunities, coordinating and engaging, identify and support agencies and the like. So it's a whole entire process and role of a grant manager.
That's a lot. And for the nonprofits in this room or the people who are pursuing funding, I want you to drop in the chat your name, your organization, and have you apply for a grant. So yes or no. So just tell us who you are in the chat by introducing yourself so we can know who's in the room. So I greatly appreciate that. And then also my people on Facebook, you can do the same because I'm watching over there as well. So when we talk about the grant cycle, okay, in my mind, you correct me if I'm wrong, when we talk about the grant cycle, I'm thinking about, okay, the process before you announce it, the announcement of the grant, and then the time that people are applying. So can you share with our nonprofits, what exactly is a grant cycle? Like, how important is it for you to understand, or a nonprofit leader to understand a grant cycle?
Okay. So it's 3 main stages of a grant cycle. It's the pre-award, the award, and a post-award. And what you want to really understand about the grant cycle is it an annual grant? Is it biannual? Is it every 2 years? Is it a short circle grant? Because sometimes we have short cycles where it's like 3 months, 6 months, a whole entire year. So you want to kind of understand the grant and the cycle of the grant to be able to apply for it each year, or understand what programming that you have that is going to fit into that grant cycle. So again, it's the pre-award, the award, and the post-award. Applying, making decisions, implementing different awards specifically to that grant is really the grant cycle. Understanding your physical year versus 2020, 2021, 2022. All of those things is very important when it comes to the grant cycle. So with that grant cycle, it's a whole entire process that happens. The first step is that myself or any other grant manager, we're looking at the grant, we're making sure we're reading through it, making sure that we are adhering and implementing the guidelines. Then we go into a grant portal. I actually literally design the applications. So it's somebody behind that work, designing the applications, making sure that the applications are clear, it's concise, you understand, we're not making you jump through hoops to get through it. We test the application. Then once that process is done, we have a launch date. We launch the date. The grants manager job in this process is to make sure that you understand that the deadline is coming up. We are also meant to offer you support during that process. So budgeting is something that I see that a lot of individual artists and nonprofit organizations struggle with, is that budget part. And we can jump back into that, Alana.
We will.
So making sure that we dive into that. And then also once that process goes through, you apply for the grant. And then we have a panel process. So myself as a grants manager, anybody working for the agency, we have no voting power whatsoever. And
let's talk about that, because my next question was about the grants review process. And back in January, December, January, I was recruited to review 17 grants or 10. So talk about the grant review process when it comes down to actually voting on who receives the money, and then, telling the people that they received the money as well. So let's talk about that.
One of the things that we want to do is always have an inclusive grant panel. And what we mean about inclusive, we're thinking about race, we're thinking about gender, we're thinking about age, we're thinking about your special expertise. One of the reasons why Arts Greensboro reached out to Alana is because she understands a nonprofit. She has nonprofit experience. She's a nonprofit coach. So she understands when she's looking at numbers, the organization structure, she understands what's happening behind the scenes. So we're looking for experts in that particular field. So that's how we pick our panelists. So it's diverse. Sometimes you know who the panelists are, and sometimes we choose not to share that because sometimes the communities are so small. And say, for instance, if Alana voted somebody down, and gave them a low score, and it's somebody that she knows. We don't want them people sitting in her parking lot looking for her,
Right.
So sometimes we keep that discreet just for the protection of the panelists. However, so we go through that process, and then the panelists have to score. So we give them about 3 to 4 weeks to score. It could be a range of 17 grant applications, 10 grant applications. And when we're dealing with individual artists, individual organizations, it could go up to 200. They score, it's in a grant portal, any type of grant portal. And then after that, we have a meeting. So we meet together with all the panelists as a team, and we review the scores and their organization structure. And if anybody can offer any feedback or highlight or advocate for that organization, that is the time to do it. And then after that, they put in their scores. I give them 24 hours to make their final decisions. And then after that, we have the final scores. And then your funding, the allocation of funds is based off of your scores. So that's another thing. So it's very fair across the board. Just understand that. I want to say it one more time. The allocation of your funds is based on your scores. And we do that to keep it fair and equitable across the board.
And that is so awesome to know, because I know several people who apply for funding, and it becomes emotional. It becomes like a sensitive, subject when someone has been rejected from not getting money. So, we just really want everyone to understand that there's a whole entire team and process that goes into you receiving money. And it's really important for you to make sure that you're clear, you're concise, and you know exactly what you're doing, how you're going to do it, who you're serving. Like, make it so simple and straight to the point. Like, I think I specialize in just being so blunt and straight to the point. And I think that's my God-given talent when it comes to that. So let's talk about, why does it take so long for people to get the money? Like, for example, the deadline could be February 1, but I won't receive the check until July. So why does it take so long for people to get the money that they need?
Yep. Very good question. Number one, keeping it simple, is that most funding agencies are nonprofits themselves. So therefore, we have to go through a board process. The panelists gives us the scores. We come up with a range of who's going to receive this, and that. Then we have to package the recommended scores and recommended allocation of funds. And then we have to wait for the board to approve it. The board may not always approve that every organization should be funded. And I've seen that in a recent cycle that just came for a couple of weeks ago. So that's why it happens. It takes so long. The money is already there. I just want you to know, we have to go through this whole application process, all this. We have to bring the panelists in. We have to take our scores and speak to the grants committee. We have to take the grants committee information and give it to the board. The board has to come down the pipeline and say, hey, we agree, we disagree, change this, change that. Then we have to send out, draft up an award letter, send it to you, or a decline letter and send it to you. Then we have to go through the back end of a grant portal and put in your numbers, how much you got funded, select in the grant portal, accept, decline, in progress, disqualified, and then we put it out there to you all. So that's why it takes so long.
Oh, you teaching tonight. So for my artists, and this question is for my friend Tim, for my artists who do not have a 501c3 and they're applying for grant funding, like, what is the best practice for them to be able to go about with that process, especially if you are, he's producing a play? Like, what is the best way for him to go through that process without a 501c3? Like, is it the fiscal sponsor, or is it still connecting with an arts organization that understands, his background?
If you want to receive grant funding, the best approach is to team up and receive a physical sponsor. That is the best approach. You have to get a physical sponsor to apply. We have a lot of grantees that apply for grant funding. Some have even been for-profit businesses, but they've teamed up with a nonprofit or organization with a status of a 501(c) and use them as a physical sponsor. So that would be the best approach if you want to receive grant funding. The organization that you choose to team up with, they need to believe in your vision, they need to believe in your mission, and you need to have some type of experience working with them. So how do you find a physical sponsor? Number one, file for your organization's F013C status. If you haven't already, start this search for a physical sponsor. You should already have someone in your network. And once you found that right sponsor, formalize the sponsorship with a written agreement. So I've seen a lot of businesses, for-profit businesses, be able to receive grant funding because they connected with the right organization.
Correct. Good. And there are artists that have received funding without an actual 501(c)(3) because it's like an artist grant.
Right.
Exactly. So there is funding out there for people who are artists, and that's just their specialty.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what are some of the top mistakes that you see new nonprofits making when it comes down to applying for grants? And I know we saw it with our grant review, but like, please just tell the church, what are the top mistakes that happen when people apply for money?
Number one mistake that I have observed in this position is that you don't ask for enough money.
Ooh.
I'm going to say that a lot of times I've seen people ask for $1,000, and $1,000 is a lot, but it's 2022. I mean, what can you really do with $1,000? You got to think about that. A number two mistake that I've seen is that the people are not, they are submitting their grant at the last minute. That's kind of a bad habit to have. If you really want to receive funding, you should at least submit the grant at least 3 days before the grant is due, because it gives the grant manager or grant coordinator, anybody behind the scenes, gives them time to review your application and tell you if something is off. But if you submit it, the grant is due Friday at 11:59 and you submit it at 11:39, that's it. It's nothing we can do. So I would say submit your grant as early as possible and answer. Number three, answering the questions. A lot of times people are not answering the questions. If it's a 2-part question, break that question down in a Microsoft Word document before you put it in the grant portal, and break it all the way down. Make sure that you're answering questions as clearly and as concise as possible. What was I gonna say? Let me think. Number 4, that budget. If you're not good with budgets and you're not good with math, especially if you have a creative mind, it is okay. Your job is to send that budget to a financial manager, to a grant writer, to someone that has the expertise in that field in finance that you do not have, and have them review your budget. If you don't have those types of resources, then you are the person I'm talking to that's to submit your grant first, so that they can basically review your grant. It's always a financial manager or somebody behind the scenes in any nonprofit art organization. So one of the things you should do is reach out to them. Hey, this is my budget. Do you have time to look over it? And more than likely, they're going to say yes, because all granting agencies want every applicant to succeed.
They really do. And I think the one thing I did see with Arts Greensboro and with the panel that I served on, people, even the organizations that received the lowest score, someone even said, I'm talking about like this lady poured into my life afterwards. Thank you, Darlene. And she said, I know this organization did not answer all the questions, but is it possible for them to receive something? And I was like, wow, like just having the ability to be on a panel, and these people are advocating for these nonprofits to receive money. So, it's all about who is in the room, who is advocating for your organization. And, yes, it is the grant application. It is the, turning things in, but it's also about who are you outside of this? Like, what are you putting out there on social media? Like, how do people identify you? Because the one thing on that panel, everyone did this. We all looked up our candidates on social media. We wanted to see them doing the work. And someone said, well, they applied for the money, but they really weren't doing what they said they were doing. So honestly, if you're going to do this work, you actually have to show that you're doing the work. So transitioning into relationship building, the one thing I was so impressed with y'all's process through Submittable, you actually took the time, Darlene, to provide feedbacks to applicants to correct their proposal. And that's not normal. I'm sorry, that's not normal. I don't see it out here when I'm trying to get this money. So how important is it to build a relationship with the funder? Like, what are some tips to build relationships with people?
I would say that it is very important to build a relationship with funders. It is just about calling them, having a relationship with them, tagging them, letting them know the community work that you're doing. So if you have a project or it's a flyer or it's a programming, emailing them, letting them know, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm interacting and engaging with the community. Just kind of giving them like the background of what you really do is very, very important, because just like Alana mentioned, the advocacy is very important about it. The ambassadorship is very important behind that work. So that's what I pretty much would say. But understanding who you're working with and reaching out to them and building a relationship with any funder, anybody that has the ability to take you from A to Z, you definitely want to have a relationship with them.
Absolutely. And then close to the last question that I have, what advice would you give to an organization that was rejected by a funder? Not by Darlene,
right,
but a funder.
Right. So the best answer I have, I'm just going to give you a little scenario. With our individual artist support grants that we have at Arts Greensboro, we had about 230 plus individual artists apply. So of course the pool was bigger than it was last year, but still to fund 200 artists, you need a greater pool of money funding. So what I basically did is, as a grants manager, like she's saying, I'm a little unique, but I remember myself. I always put myself in position of the person that's applying for a grant, whether it's an individual artist or a nonprofit organization. And I remember, like, I'm a public artist, so I apply for projects all the time. I remember not being able to receive those projects. So I wrote them a letter, and I started the letter off by saying to them, this is not your ending. This is your beginning. And this was a process. It's an educational process, number one. We have not been educated on grants, especially brown and Black people in this community. We never knew that it was free funding out here, that all you have to do is apply and receive money. So it's an education process. The first time you apply, you may not get it. But the thing that you need to do is pat yourself on the back, because at the end of the day, you walk through the process and now you know what to do on the next grant cycle that's coming down the pipeline in any granting agency. It's just a process that you have to go through, and it's a teachable process that you have to go through. So I want to let you all know out here to be encouraged. If you have not received funding, so what? So what? Try again. And you continue to try again and work and build a team around you. A lot of times people forget that you cannot be a one-man person when you're applying for funding and launching a nonprofit and running a nonprofit. You really, really need a team around you to bounce ideas off of, read your grant proposal, make sure your budget is straight, make sure you got somebody operating social media. So that's kind of what I would say. I just broke down that whole letter to them, and I put myself into the letter, And I told them those key points. And I said that failure is only an early attempt to success. It's really no such thing as failure. It's an early attempt to success. It's a maturity thing. And it's about being prepared for the next cycle that's coming down the pipeline. So that's what I would say with that.
That was a whole word right there. And I appreciate that. Now, I do have an additional question that just popped in my head. So you just take me as I am. When it comes down to the grant reports, like reporting, what did you do with the money?
Right.
How important is the grant report? Who does the grant report go to? Like, can you share any information regarding that process?
That's a really good question as well. What you want to do is document your impact. Who is your target audience? How many people have attended, whether it's virtual or online? How many lives have you impacted, affected, helped, motivated, promoted them? So those are the things that you want to really, really document, is your impact in the community. And for instance, like I use Alana, she don't know this, but I use her all the time. Like with the book bag drive that she did, how many people did you have there?
765 people in the rain.
In the rain. Mm-hmm. How much money did you raise for that?
$4,000.
$4,000. Like those are the numbers that you need to have. That's the impact. The work that she's actually doing, and it's not because we on a Zoom together. I always use her as an example, whether she's there or not, is that you can see it. It's on Instagram, it's on Facebook. She's documented the pictures, the book bags, the supplies. It's in a gym, it's in a warehouse. Like, you really want people to understand your heart and why you decided to do a nonprofit, because you didn't have to decide to do a nonprofit. You could have went for profit. My first business was for profit. I was all about making money, So, and nonprofits, that's another thing that's a myth. Nonprofits don't make money. That is not true. Nonprofits are billion-dollar companies. It's just a different type of mission that you have compared to a for-profit business. But at the end of the day, it's about really impacting, capturing the data of the impact that you have on the community and the lives that you are serving. And that's very important. We take that data and we give it back. For instance, we would give that data to the North Carolina Arts Council, who funds us. So you all have to do reporting to give to us. And then we take your numbers and give it to the North Carolina Arts Council and say, hey, this is why we chose to fund this organization. This is the work that they're doing in the community. And this is why we need you all to continue to fund us so we can continue to funnel the money into the community. So that is why we need that type of data.
That's so awesome. I thank you so much. So now we're going to get into some questions that I see on Zoom. For my people on Facebook, can you repeat your questions? Because if I hit it, it's going to make a sound. So we ain't going to do that. So we have one question. What advice would you give to nonprofits who are just starting out and don't have a record of programming? Should a startup nonprofit apply for grants immediately or wait?
Wait.
Okay.
The reason why I say that is because even with a for-profit business, I could not have walked into the bank my first 2 or 3 years to get a loan. Most businesses do not survive. That's the statistics. They do not survive after 12 months. And you all have seen it in the city of Greensboro. We've seen business pop up and we've seen them go. It just is what it is. So no business or granting agency is going to basically give you money for you to close. So I would say if you are a nonprofit art organization, or not just nonprofit art organization, but any nonprofit organization, give it 12 months, be in business for a year, and then apply for funding.
Got it. Next question comes from Tim. It says, can we ask for an amount for I think he's asking the amount of money that the funder is willing to provide. Can you ask the funder about what's in the pool, like what's in the pot for the money?
Yeah, most granting agencies already have that number out there. So for instance, we just launched a Arts Greensboro Relief Fund, and the maximum grant amount that they could apply for was $25,000. So based off of that, they said apply for what you need. those numbers should be disclosed to you up front, so you'll know how much money you need to ask for.
That's good. That's good. So what happens to your funding if you don't meet the goal of your program?
You have to give that money back.
Because you signed the grant agreement too.
You signed the grant. It's a contract. I send you a contract. Sure do. You got to sign it with your deliverables, this, and that. But if you don't meet those deliverables, you have to give the money back. I have not seen that, but I know that it has happened before. So you definitely want to hit those deliverables.
Got it. Next questions. I don't think this is ethical, but I'm going to ask the question. Are funders allowed to accept gifts from those who are trying to develop relationships, like gift cards?
Well, I don't know if we are or not. I've never seen that happen before, but I would say if you're really trying to build a relationship with a funder, do a coffee and conversations. Reach out to the president, CEO, say, hey, I want to introduce myself. I want to introduce my organization. Do coffee and talk to them that way.
Got it. Next question comes from Charlene Sparks. Love you, Charlene. She says, how do you break through and connect with organizations who have been established with grants? She said this has been very difficult for their organizations. We have several nonprofits we are connected with, but none of us are strong enough, or none of them are strong enough leads. So they're trying to improve on their fundraising and sponsorships, and by connecting with other organizations. So how do they do that?
That is one of the reasons why Arts Greensboro promoted me to the Creative Community Engagement Officer. My job is to come up with a strategic plan on how nonprofit organizations can cross collaborate to strengthen each organization, so everybody's not doing the same thing and everybody's bringing their strength to the table. My advice would be to keep doing what you're doing, keep reaching out to these organizations, but maybe come up with a strategic plan of where you want to go, where the other organization want to go, and make sure that both organizations, or all the organizations that you're working with, y'all are on the same pace, the same level, and as the young people say, matching each other's energy.
I'm gonna match it. Tim wants to know, so when we talk about if you don't meet the goal with the funder or with the program, and let's say he's working with a fiscal sponsor, would the fiscal sponsor keep their percentage if the funds have to be returned?
No, all of the money.
All of the money. Okay, so it is up to the nonprofit to make sure if you have this program, you're going to spend the money on exactly what you say you're going to do, and you need to document it and report it back to the funder.
Correct.
All right. We have a question. What's a good starting point for applying for grants?
It depends. The number one starting point is research your industry, whether you're in the arts industry, entertainment industry, the medical industry. Like the young lady that I work out with, that's my personal trainer. She's in the fitness industry, but her organization is a nonprofit. So understanding your industry first, and then from there, researching what grants that they have available in your industry.
Got it. And a lot of that information can be found through your local nonprofit association or the state association. I know for our county, we find out a lot of information just through the community foundation. So, and then also signing up for foundations newsletters. Like there was a grant who came out like 2 days ago, and they like personally emailed me and said, hey, you need to apply for this grant. Hallelujah. Yes, I will. So yeah, just staying connected to the funder. We have another question. Are grants taxable?
Yes.
Okay, so how so?
Grants money is still considered some type of income, so it is taxable. Yep.
Okay. And do you recommend we use a grant database? So I'm assuming like Foundation Directory Online, Instrumentable. all those platforms out there, that those are paid subscriptions.
Yeah, those are paid subscriptions, Submittable, Go Smart. You don't really need to do that as a nonprofit. That's up to the agency. And then I wanted to piggyback on to that last question. Also, too, sponsorships and stuff like that are tax write-off. So for instance, some of the people that's in the cultural arts building, they are there, but they have low rent. That's still a tax write-off. If it would just depend on Alana, but say for instance, Alana wanted to come and coach you, and she's sponsoring that and giving that service to you for free, that's a tax write-off to her because that's a service that she actually charges for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. I think I have a last question. How do you survive the first year if you don't apply for funding until after the first year?
Okay, I gotta break this down. And this is one of the biggest things I want to help the brown and Black community with. And what separates the brown and Black art organizations compared to the white organizations. Number one, you have to have the ability to raise money if you're going to be in a nonprofit world. That's the key thing, is being able to raise money. How do you raise money? It's the 3 F's. It's family, friends, and fools.
What?
Family, friends, and fools. People that love you, that support you. Ask them for $25, $35, $100 donations. You start off that way. You start off by tapping into your personal network, and then you expand from there. The other thing that you need to do is donors. You got to find donors, because sometimes with the white organizations that I've noticed, if they don't want to even continue to apply for grants through agencies, they have enough donors that's supporting their organization year in and year out that it doesn't even matter. So you want to identify key stakeholders in your community that believes in your vision, that's willing to be on your donor base. And a donor base means you reach out to them and you ask them for $1,000 to $5,000 to $10,000 a year. Like for 5 years, they need to commit to a 5-year commitment that they're going to give your organization $1,000, $2,000, $2,500, $5,000. Those are the 2 things that you have to work on. So that's how you sustain your business. That's what they're looking for. Can you grow and scale your business by yourself, by being resourceful? And we all know that we're resourceful on this call. So that's going to be the key thing. You should, if you're starting any business and you don't have a hustle bone in your body, I always tell you, you might want to just go into real estate or go into something else. But if it's something like this, you got to have a hustle bone in your body. If you don't like asking people for money, you're in the wrong profession.
That part. Absolutely. Because you know me, I will have a Yorkie in a minute asking y'all for $20. Okay. For Tim, he said, to be eligible for accredited investors in the future for a production must not be public funding. Can someone make a tax deductible donation to the fiscal sponsor for my initiative?
Yes.
Okay. So they would just have to designate that money to your project, Tim. Okay. Leah wants to know, how do you gain enough trust from others to raise money? I love that question. Like, how do I market that I'm raising money in a professional way so people will give? Go ahead, Darlene, because you know me.
You want to?
Okay. Well, thank you, Darlene. Leah, it really comes where you actually show people what you're doing. Like, you show people, you commit to it. Like, you are literally the greatest showman. Like, you show up every time you're saying that you're going to impact the community. If you're going to be helping single moms, if you're going to be helping babies, then we need to see the work. And then that's how you build trust. And then also host a free virtual event get people's emails and then upload those emails to your email list and keep people connected and make people feel like, oh my God, I'm a part of this journey. That's how crowdfunding works. People want to see you succeed. They want to see you win. So it's really about, how do I connect with my audience? And I know for me, I take people on this journey. I'm like, oh my God, you're with me. I take my kids on a journey with you. So how do you do that? And it's all about like marketing, using social media, being transparent, and just really showing your work. But you got to start first. You just can't say, oh, I need $5,000, but there's no production, there's no event, there's no program, there's no people. You got to start somewhere. And I think with I'm a Queen, our biggest advocate has been social media, because people have proof that we actually can do the work and pull it off. So that's how you build trust. Okay. All right. Let's see. Everybody, yes. Amen in the comments. All right. All right. I think we've answered everything. So thank you, Darlene. I hope this was helpful to everyone. I hope this was beneficial. For those who don't know, I'm doing a grant writing boot camp in the month of April. So if you want to sign up, you can go to my website at Alana Knows Nonprofits.com. I will send you the information tonight, but it is a great boot camp for you to learn the different elements of a proposal. I will work directly with you. I will walk beside you, but you have to be willing to do the work. So I will share that information tonight. Darlene, do you have any closing words? And thank you, Tim. He said the boot camp rocks. All right, Darlene, anything you have for the people?
Just last but not least, just be encouraged. Do your research. Be thorough in everything that you do. Document your impact, and just know that, what do they say? If you build something,
they will come.
They will come.
They will come.
They will come.
All right. That is an awesome way to end our Zoom. Thank you so much for everybody who tuned in. This was the best 45 minutes of our lives. So thank you so much, Darlene. And I will be in touch with everyone after we are done. And yes, Angela, this will be on my Facebook page and also my YouTube page. So it will be out there. Go ahead, Darlene.
I got one last thing. I just want to get out. I just saw, I'm just seeing her. Shout out to Coach Donna K. I've lost 43 pounds in her programming. So she's up here too.
Yes, Miss Donna. Love Miss Donna. She teaches you how to eat right and live right. So I'm happy for that. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you later. And Darlene, congratulations on your new promotion.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Good night.